Yeah.
And then, so I went through undergrad and my master's in
Where'd you
music.
go?
Well, I did a lot of touring in my undergrad. I was figuring some things out like a lot of people did in undergrad.
Tell us
And
where you bounced around from.
so I started at U of I,
Mm-hmm.
then went down to Southern Illinois University at Carbondale where I
Mm-hmm.
finished.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I graduated from my undergrad, I went out to Arizona and I studied at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff.
And
And
so what brought you from like Midwest to Arizona? Was it the program? Was it just like a really stellar music program? Like how did that get on your radar?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I had a teacher for 1 year in my undergrad. She was my previous teacher I had had since, I was in sixth grade. I studied with him privately. He moved to Memphis, and I had actually auditioned to go down to Memphis and do my grad work with him and go study with him again because I loved studying with him. But one of one of the interim teachers that I had met got a gig at NAU, and she was like, "Hey, I can get you an assistantship at NAU if you want to go to Arizona." And all of a sudden, I Google um, Flagstaff, which I'd never heard of, and I was like, "Hey, that place looks amazing." Um,
Beautiful.
and it ended up being a great assistantship. It was with like the band program, which is not anything I had a huge interest in, but I was like, sure, I can help with the marching band to get, my grad
School
school
for
paid
free.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went out and followed her. She allowed me to put 10 boxes into her moving truck
Oh,
and,
that's so
and
nice.
and move out there with her, and I helped her pack and get ready. She was also planning, I think, a wedding and stuff at the time, so we helped each other. It was that theme of mutual benefit.
Yeah. Isn't it awesome too when those people like just sort of cross your path and it's like that whole reason season lifetime thing, right? Like
Mhm,
sometimes people just drop in and then they drop back out, or you and her, I'm assuming, engaged throughout your stay there, but like
mhm.
who knows for how long after, right? Like
Yeah.
I just love that. Like, if you're open to receiving it in a way that you're like, this is for a whole nother podcast, but
Mhm,
right, if you're open to receiving it in a way that is unexpected or like that you would never have guessed, like
mhm.
you got to put your stuff on her truck. You didn't even have to get your own truck. Like
I
that's
know. It was amazing. It was amazing, and
early days of manifestation. You probably didn't even know what you were doing.
right, and
Yeah.
and sh and she got a personal assistant during her move,
Right.
and and
Right.
and planning a wedding
Win
and
win.
all of it. Yeah. So we went across the country. I got to see places I'd never seen before. I'd never been through New Mexico,
Mm.
and I'd never been to the desert.
Doesn't the
Um,
desert look like Mars the first time you
yeah,
like it literally looks like another planet.
yeah. I was like, oh, I'm moving to the moon, or
Yeah.
like it was just completely alien,
Yeah.
but like I couldn't stop like just
Hmm.
staring at it and just being like in awe. And
It's
then
mesmerizing.
when I
Yeah.
got to Flagstaff, I was like, I can't believe I've never lived any place that was that pretty. Now, not that there isn't places of beauty in Southern Illinois, and I've come to appreciate the beauty of a cornfield in a different way coming back to it.
Yeah.
But um at the time I'd never been around mountains, and so all
Mm.
of that really sort of picturesque beauty was sort of new to me, and it was mesmerizing. I was in love with Arizona like from minute one.
Arizona is magic.
It
I
is.
I've
It
lived
is.
here since 2008, 10 of those years in Phoenix, and I've been up here in Prescott, which is northern Arizona, pretty close to
Mhm.
Flagstaff, a couple
Mhm.
hours, for 2.5 years. It's magic. There's just yeah, it's if people have not been, let's do a little plug for AZ. Well, just the desert and the whole Southwest is like,
Yes.
it's just a whole different bag of tricks. And what's interesting is like 20 minutes in any direction, the landscape changes. Like you think
Mhm.
it's like the traditional kind of what you see in Phoenix, right? The cactus and kind of dry and some of that neutral palette or whatever, but like every single place you go in the state, it looks different. It's
Yeah.
really cool.
Well,
Yeah.
and it was a different experience for me too, because I was used to being in places where all of the land was either farm or park or
Mm-hmm.
a town. Like there was no unused land, right?
Right.
Or sort of untamed open land.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got to go to places where there were no roads to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was my dad even at one point asked me to keep sending him maps, and I'd send him like the third or fourth map, and I'm like, Dad, what are you wanting on a map that I'm not getting you? And he's like, well, I need one with all of the roads. I was like, oh no, I understand the problem now.
Yeah.
There are no roads there.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello, Grand Canyon. Hello, just
I'm like, no, there.
state land. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so if you look to the right of this highway, there's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, well, there's something there, but it's not like, it's
Right.
not roads and towns and things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a park. It's just mountain and cragginess, and I don't even know
Yes.
how you would start to, like, so just having those inaccessible kind of hard terrain areas
Yeah.
where like that's like living in a mythical fairyland compared to like everything's already a park or a
Or a
or
strip mall.
or a farm. It's something for
Yeah.
consumption, like,
Mm-hmm.
but like that is, it's just its own thing.
It just
It.
is.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember when I drove across country in my tiny little VW Beetle convertible at the time
Mhm.
with two dogs on my lap. My dad was driving. I had two dogs on my lap and the back seat was full of stuff. I remember just thinking like, how did people do this in covered wagons and on
No joke.
horse? Like I couldn't wrap my brain around like how people did that. Like
It's just so brave.
the journey. Well, and then
Yeah.
now obviously being here and learning more about the land and the people who really tended to the land and lived off the, and like everything was in harmony and plants were medicine and all of that, all of those layers, which we won't get
Mhm.
into today, but holy wow, right? And I think that like speaks to some of the magic too, where it's just
Mhm.
it's baked into the, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a cool experience. Like,
Yes, it was very cool.
so was that, let's speaking of storytelling, was that somewhat foreshadowing of some of those challenges then that you like had to maneuver through maybe in college or working on your master's, or like, let's step into that phase and French horn and
Yeah, so going into the wilds, coming to Arizona, that was really kind of where I became an adult, and
mm,
I think I had to do a lot of um, growing up and actually figuring out were the things that, you don't know which dragons you're slaying when
mm,
you're young. You just don't know what fights. Like you're so immersed in the fight, and you don't know what those struggles even are.
mm-hmm,
So I was regularly, I think, getting my butt kicked by things I didn't understand, and I was just trying to make the next best decision. Right? It wasn't.
mm-hmm,
There was never really an understanding of who I was, right, or what was actually kicking my tail all the time.
mm-hmm. So with that, was there still something calling to you or speaking to you or on a higher level that was like keeping you a bit above some of the like minutia of navigating through evolving as a human, right? Like,
Hmm.
so was there still something that was like pulling you a little bit along as you stumbled along the path?
Yeah, I think I let other people, um, uh, I would anchor myself to other people, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of be drawn through whatever other people's stuff
Mm,
was,
uh,
right?
are you also saying men? Because I mean,
Well,
you and I share a lot of the same DNA, right? Like people pleasing, over perfectionisticness, codependency. I mean, we don't need to air all of it right here,
right,
but yeah, for sure. Like, oh, this guy's into this music. Now I'm into that kind of music. Or, oh,
right,
so and so dresses like that. That looks cool. Let me try to, and you try
yes,
it on, right? And you're like, but
yeah.
this doesn't feel like me.
Right.
Yeah.
I was constantly just sort of like I was attracted to like really kind of over the top,
Mm-hmm.
gregarious people, like especially being a little shy and retreating, or of kind of wanting to be behind it, but also being attracted to like them, wanting what they had,
Mm,
basically, that being able to step into yourself
yeah.
and project and give.
Sure.
So I was attracted to big personalities in my friends,
Mm-hmm.
strong personalities, and ones that ended up taking a lot of the oxygen in every room that I was in.
Mm.
So that happened in relationships, mentors, friends. Like that was just a pattern that kept going and going.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think, it helped me. I think I learned a lot about what was good for me and what wasn't
Mm-hmm.
good for me in that time. And I think through that, at some point, I think I started to go, okay, no, what is it that I started actually asking myself, but what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
But what do you want?
I think at that age there can be a lot of like wanting to hitch our wagon to someone else's star instead
Hmm.
of realizing that we are a star, and that it's,
Yeah.
like peeling all that away is allowing, that's how we allow ourselves to shine. But that takes a
Yeah.
long time to, get
Well,
there.
and I was replacing parents, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think that is a normal thing too, is that when you move away from, especially moving away from the security of home, I was looking for home again
Yes.
in a new place,
Yeah.
and really not knowing how to create home for myself.
I was just gonna say, right? Like everywhere we go, there we are. Like we're home.
Yeah,
We have to find that within. Yeah.
yeah, and so I just don't think I was there. I think I was just looking for it externally for a long time.
Sure. Yeah.
But so in during that time, that's when as I was completing my master's in music, that's when I started realizing, like, hey, I don't know if I want this gig.
So okay, so you got an undergrad in music also.
Hmm.
So were you thinking at that time you were going to become a professional musician? Is that the
Hmm.
path that you were sort of
Yeah, yeah,
on?
I was on that path, and also I wanted to be an academic in music. I wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
probably French horn professor somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It was the playing of music and music pedagogy at a college level that was interesting to me. I didn't want to be a band director, never did. So I wasn't a music ed major. I was always performance.
Mm-hmm. And then where did that? So walk me through a little bit. Like you did the undergrad, you went into master's degree.
Hmm. And the thought was beyond that. I was going to go and get a doctorate in music after that, like,
Yep.
because that's pretty much the path of an academic. Um, but during that master's program, I started feeling like I kind of wanted to be out of college for a little bit. I wanted to experience something else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also I hated the thought of like still being a nomad for quite some time. Because at that point, I'd been at several different college towns. Like that was like the third college town I'd been in. And I'm like, I'm a little sick of that. And I didn't like the thought of how unable to build community and build roots that I was going to be as a performer.
Mm-hmm.
That I was going to have to go wherever the gig was. That I was going to have to, like that I still had so much nomad. And I was thinking, did I want a family? Did I want kids? Like
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even sure if I'd even ever given myself room for thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
because I was so enamored of like the horn and getting out and kind of seeing the world that I hadn't even thought like, hey, do I want to like put down roots somewhere? Do I want a family? Do I
Mm-hmm.
want so that's when I thought, well, after I graduate, I thought about, for a split second, I was like, maybe I'll go get a law degree. And I don't even know where that came in. It was like the panic of not knowing what was next.
Right.
And I was like, well, I could just go back and study more.
Right. Yeah, I want to get away from being a nomad and going to another school, but maybe just diving deep into some other
Yeah,
distraction will be
right.
the answer. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, luckily, I had gone down to Scottsdale and found it enchanting in a different way. And I was like, how about I just get an apartment and a job and like see what that's like?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's what I ended up doing. I went down to the valley. I found an apartment. I found a gig. It was working for a marketing and demonstration company in their office. So the ladies that give out samples, it was the company that hires and contracts those ladies, doing some back end administrative work. So a lot of photocopying and data entry,
Yeah.
um, in an
And so
office
what
by
time
myself.
period was this? Like what year, where are we at
Um,
time wise?
I graduated from my master's in music in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Yes, that's right. So 2003.
Early
Um,
2000s then. Mm-hmm.
And then started with that marketing and demonstration company. It wasn't the right gig, and I was really